Hey guys, this is your boy Mike coming at you with a tutorial on how to make the mug we were making in class. Um, I think this will be a good idea because you'll be able to rewind the video and start from anywhere that you need me to. I'm going to try to get all of my button presses and like settings and stuff, but I might drop something, so just pay attention if you get lost, and then keep rewatching it and scrolling back in the timeline. Make sure you get all the information that you need. But yeah, so we're going to start with a cube. You can go into Create, Polygon Primitive to make it right there. At home, though, you might have something called Interactive Creation on, which is right here. And that'll try to do something like this, where it's telling you to do this and drag up for the height. But I don't know. I think it's a bit whack because look, you have no sense of precision over that. And if you look in your channel box, you have a bunch of weird values. Like come on, we don't need that. We're gonna try to make something nice and clean for ourselves here. So turn off interactive creation if it's on, and then go back and create a cube. And we're going to start with, because as you remember, these are all verts. And you need more verts in order to be able to move verts around. So what you're going to need to do is go into Modeling Toolkit and use your Multi-Cut tool. Now with Multi-Cut, you'll see it's highlighting where exactly it wants to make cuts. Like I just made a cut there, but we don't want that. What we want is to use Control while we're cutting. And this will go into edge loop mode. So it's going to make what we call an edge loop, or basically a loop of edges. So you can see like the orange highlighted loop going around the object is what we call the edge loop. So what we want to do is hold Shift to enable snapping, and this will snap based on your snap settings, which can be found down here. Currently it's set to 10%, so this is going along in 10% increments. So we want 50%, which is right here, and we want another one across the other side. So now we have that, and you're like, Mike, it's still just a damn square, so we need this to be more cylindrical in shape. So we can go right here, we can just shift select all of our outside edges, and you can move it around with the move tool, but what we're looking for is scale. We want to scale these inward, because like if you just went into each one individually and moved it, yeah, you can get something that's like looking round, but it won't be precise. But we're looking for a nice clean mug. So what we want to do is scale uniformly. Now we can scale like this, but that you'll see that it's messing us up on this axis as well. So we want to basically scale with every axis except for this one. And you can do this by dragging on the green box. You'll notice that the red and the blue became highlighted when I grabbed that. Whoops, I accidentally deselected that. So you'll see that red and blue became highlighted because it knows we're going to be scaling along those points. I just undid those. So you can either scale them like this, or you can hold Control and click on the Y-axis right there, and then drag them in like that. Either way works. You get the same result. So now I want to align this whole object to be, right on the grid, just because like right now you're kind of inside of the grid, but this object is going to like rest on a table or something, like anything like that. So what we're moving around is the pivot point. That pivot point needs to be at the bottom of this cylinder that we have right now. And so to start moving the pivot point around, you hold D. You'll notice your manipulator changes and you can kind of move it anywhere. So now I just move the pivot point way off center, but it'll still move around that. So if I go into rotate with E, you'll see now it's rotating around that pivot point. I don't want that pivot point, but we're going to use that a similar workflow. So we're going to hold D and then move this point around. Now I covered snapping in class, but you'll see here if I hold V, this option up here becomes highlighted, and that means that it's going to snap to individual vertices. So if I hold this and drag this down to the bottom, it is now, the pivot point has now snapped to these bottom vertices. And so now I'm moving from the very bottom of the cylinder, right? Just undo that. But we want this to rest on right on the grid level. So if we hold X, you'll see that this becomes highlighted. And you can just click these on, by the way. So now grid snapping is just enabled by default. But I like to just use the shortcuts of holding it because it's just a lot faster, and then you're not locked into that option and you have to go back and all that jazz, you know. So now we have it perfectly resting on our grid. Now the mug we were looking at was a little bit tapered towards the top, so I'm gonna expand this outward. And it needs to be able to hold liquid, right? So we're going to use our good friend Extrude right there. And we can kind of use these options, you know, to get something. But I find it's easiest to either use offset right here and shrink it like that, or just straight up go into scale mode with R. Remember, you have scale, move, or move with W, rotate with E, and scale with R. So I'm looking to just scale this with R to get a lot more control. Scale from the middle one, or again, since we only really need to scale on red and blue, the red and blue axis, the Z and the X. You can also use this little green box to scale. And now that we have that, I'm going to extrude again. And I'm going to pull this down. Now with 4 enabled, by pressing 4, you go into wireframe mode so you can properly gauge how far down you want this to go. And I'm going to scale that again with that inside one. And that's a good level right there. Alright, so now we got our cup going. We need this to be a mug. And for a mug, we need to have, for it to be a mug, we need to have handles, you know, like a handle going off it. So if I go back into 5 mode, they'll be like, well, how do I make that? Like, what you need is more verts. You need to be able to have a proper amount of geometry in order for you to be able to extrude out and create that handle shape. So that's our goal. So we're trying to make the right amount of quads around here to be able to extrude it out and put it into itself. And to do that, there's a few ways. I could just go in and by holding Control and Shift on the multi-cut tool, just make cuts across this. Make cuts across this. Make cuts across this. So now you have all of these cuts. And then if you double click to select each edge loop, you can kind of do this. and you have a nice round object. I like this method, but it doesn't, it's good for keeping it nice and low poly, but there's also the advantage of using the smooth tool, which if I switch over to my modeling toolkit, or my modeling settings, we're going to have a lot of options in here. In this one, smooth, you have to be on object mode to use it. So go back into object mode. If you use mesh smooth, you'll see that it gave us a similar type of topology, but it's kind of like jagged. It's kind of wacky in some places, like here. And that's because if you go through, remember your display settings, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, all that stuff. If you switch between 1 and 3, you'll notice that you're going between your actual polygons and then a smooth preview mode. And then 2 shows you both at the same time, which is pretty handy. So basically when you use that smooth option, when you use that on this, it is going to make your model look more closely related to this. So we want this 3 option to be the closest. When you press 3, we want it to be as close to the final product as you can get it. And you'll notice one of the biggest problems we have currently is that this is all rounded, right? Like that's not right. Like this, it's supposed to be pretty solid like that. So what you need is what we call a retaining edge loop. So if we set an edge loop using control and multi-cut, now when you press 3, you're going to see it's a lot closer to what we had in 1. But you'll notice that it definitely pulls back here. It pulls that edge underwards, underneath the mesh. Like this edge is now right here. This edge is now right here. So we need more retaining edge loops. And the best way to get that for a surface like this, on this edge, you need basically an edge loop that goes like from here to here, to here, to here, to here, to here, to here, to here. So what you need to do for this one is to extrude it, and then you're going to want to scale that inward. You'll notice now, when I press 3, our smooth preview is even closer to what we had. And you'll see that it's pulling this edge in, but this edge, this bottom edge, is getting retained a lot closer to what we would want and to what we're expecting. You'll notice the top kind of folds in on itself, like this edge becomes this edge. So we need more retaining edge loops on this. So we'll put one right here on the outside, and one on the inside, and one right here. Well, let's see what it looks like with that right now. So you see that's looking pretty good. It's got that nice lip right there. I'm going to add one right here, though. And you should be able to see. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, you got this nice lip now. I'm gonna move this up a little bit to get it nice and round. In the smooth preview. There we go. You'll notice the inside has that same problem that the outside used to have, because we didn't put any of those retaining edge loops in there. So if you go in here, turn back on 5 so we can see what we're doing. If we make that first one exactly the same way that we made this out one, this outside one, make one right there, and then go into our face mode and do the same that we did to this part, where we just extruded that inward with Control E, and then go into scale mode with R. You're gonna have that right there, and there we go. You see that? So you get a nice solid edge on the bottom like that. Now we still don't have enough geometry on the outside of this to get a clean handle extruded from that. So I'm going to solve that by going to smooth, because remember we've been previewing with smooth preview with 3, and the goal of that is to know more closely what's going to happen to our mesh when we press smooth. So you see how I'm going to undo that. See how it's closer to the 3 preview. Undo it. So I'm going to do it again. You'll see, yeah, it's pretty much right on line with that. And now it's gotten a lot closer. So that's what it's looking like. And then if I do it again, you can see, like, do it again. You can see that it's like it's gotten really close to that smooth preview now. It's like when I press 3, there's like hardly even any difference. It's because they're doing essentially the same thing. I'm just gonna undo those so we have a workable amount of verts. And I think that's the one. Yeah. So I want a handle coming off this bad boy. And what we need to do to get that handle is to extrude these. So if you shift select 2 of these faces, make sure you don't have anything else selected. Just it's easy to go into 4, just double check before you start creating problems in your mesh. Let's go back to 5. Now we can extrude with Control E. Then change this offset to be something more, because you see how at 0.1 it's like collapsing on itself. So if we do 0.05, let's see what that gets us. Okay. So now, if we just went ahead and extrude from here, see, I think this is like a pretty fat handle, which, I mean, you know, some mugs are like that, but I want like a skinnier one, right? So I'm going to undo that. I'm going to keep undoing until I see that I undid that extrusion. Because if I go forward one, and then you'd see that I still have that. So if I accidentally deselected and then like forgot about this extrusion, I'd have a bunch of excess geometry in here, which would be a big problem. So I'm going to make sure undo poly extrude. So while we have this geometry to work with, I'm going to go into edge vertex mode, and I'm going to enable transform constraints. So with these on, whatever vertex or edge you're manipulating, it's going to slide along either the edge or the surface. So I'm going to go for surface for this. So look at this. It's just kind of going across that cup. Like, you see how it's still conforming to the mesh that is there already. So I want that. I'm going to scale in. So I'm going to bring those together like that. So yeah, it's looking pretty good right there. I'm going to do the same for the bottom ones. Just like this, just like that. Get all those 4 verts and kind of just match the scale of that to the upper ones. And there you go. And alright, so now we're ready to extrude, because using that surface slide, we made sure that we didn't break up the surface of this. Like, you can see that it all conforms. It's all nice and flat here. You don't have, like, if I turn this off, you don't have a bunch of like weird bulging or anything on your mesh. So now that we have this nice and flat, we can just Control E to extrude and bring this out. And then a nice little trick with these, like you'll notice that this has this point out, right? Because we extruded it from that same type of shape, you know, so it just brought it out with it. If you go into these verts and turn on vert snapping up here, or by pressing V, you can snap it using that arrow to be flush with the rest of your verts. And if that happens, it's going to be a lot more easy to work with as you're extruding the rest of these. So I'm going to do it to these bottom ones as well. Right there, and right there. Wait a minute, undo that and make sure that we're putting it to the right one, because these three need to line up nicely. These three need to line up nicely. So this way, when we extrude next, you're going to see we have a bunch of verts here. And they're all nicely lined up because this shape was nicely lined up. So I'm just going to drag those down with this box between the blue and the yellow axis. I'm going to rotate it on X, or whichever axis you happen to have this be. Like this could be blue, like if your handle was coming off this side. So I'm going to put this right here. I'm going to do the same with here. I'm going to kind of curve it up, get it ready to go. And I'm going to do one more just to get a nice nice transition into that arc, you know, before I bridge it. So I'm going to move these verts again, or move those faces again. I'm going to go select these faces as well. Right here. And then can delete. I'm going to select all these faces and then delete. Go into edge mode, double click the edge of the just deleted faces, double click those, and then just bridge it. And there you go. Now you'll see that this is looking like really hard. Like each edge that we made is like really hard, but this is like nice and soft. And that's due to surface normals. Normals are basically data in the mesh that says how light interacts with it. So it's like for this edge, it's going to interact and be really hard, but this one's going to be really soft. And the way you access all display settings is by going to mesh display or all normal settings, and then you'll see harden and soften edge. If I click harden edge, you'll see that everything now looks like how the handle is. If you go to soften edge, it's going to soften everything up. And you'll see it's looking weird there, but if you press 3, you'll see that it's looking like this. And that's pretty much it, my dudes. It's looking nice. Another benefit from having extruded in here first to make this is that you'll notice, like I said, it's looking a little bit whack here. But if I go back into multi-cut and then add a retaining edge to this, and here, you'll see now that it's kind of like tightening down on that whackness, and then that edge gets a lot sharper there, you know. So something to think about, your retaining edges and all that jazz. But I'm just gonna delete those because I liked how it was. It's looking nice and smooth. Nice and smooth. Now if I delete this, you'll see that not much changed because the vertices, if we go into vertex mode, are still there. So we can go into 4 mode and just drag over those and then delete them, and it'll be back to normal. Or when you still have them selected, you can just do Control Delete, and then that will delete all the vertexes along with it. Then you'll be back into normal mode. You'll be able to press 3. You'll see how it is. So if you go and select your mesh and smooth it, it's gonna keep looking closer to that result. And there you go. Okay, that's how you model that mug. All right, guys. Hope this was helpful for you. I'm gonna do a more advanced tutorial for you guys because I want to see you guys kind of push your meshes a little bit further, and because it'd be nice in the final to see more than just a mug, you know. Like everyone's gonna have. It'd be nice to have a little bit of individuality. That way we're not. That way we're not just boring the audience. Like we've already seen this mug like 1,000 times. Why are you showing us this? But yeah, so that'll be for another time though. Hopefully I'll be able to upload that this week, so you guys have something to look at for your homework. And all right, see you later.